Di petamaso sanalom. Huasabenge kaputo.
State Affairs.
State Affairs with Edmond Omeo.
Django, 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 where are you? Please come. When you get to the market, Django, don't forget me. Django, Django, Django. Django, tell the goats that the yams should stay away from Django. Are you there? When you get to the bridge, I mean the bridge of the river, buy me the coat I will wear on my journey. Django, can you hear me? Django, tell my brothers that I am coming home with the medal. I have won it. Django, I can't hear your voice. Are you at the fringes of Sambisa? Are the trees still standing? Prepare a sharp cutlass. I will bring down the trees in honor of the warriors whose blood has brought peace to the land. Django, don't run. Be vigilant and do not relent. Hey, it's the radio man's time. Yes, my time. The time to keep the mind racing. The time to calm the mind. It is Splash FM's time. It is State Affairs. It's the radio man. It's Edmond Upilo. It's the Integrity Station. Mama, African mama, the cuddling mother. I hear your voice in the depths of the forest. Oh, sweet mama. Your pains and love make me smile. Despite the storms, you are there. You are the eye of the land, Mama. On the bridge you build, we will work to redemption. African Mama, the mother of love. Arise, O nation, arise. The radio man is here. Lift your eyes. Can you see? You can see the radio man, right? I can see you too. Look. Victor Banjo's daughter is a professor, but that's not the story. The story is that Victor Banjo's daughter is yet to understand why her father was arrested, why her father was imprisoned. Victor Banjo's daughter is yet to understand why her father died. Victor Banjo's daughter is on State Affairs. See, he went to work. He went to the office of the head of state, and he never returned home. Victor Banjo's daughter is asking why. In this journey, let no one say they don't understand why. When Dele Farotimi speaks of you not dying in their war, I wonder what he means. What does Dele Farotimi mean by feudalism? Why does he anchor feudalism on ethnic grounds? Why will he title a chapter in his book Fulani Hegemony? What does that mean? In her dream, she sees soldiers marching on her house. She wakes up, she screams. Is she going through trauma? Who are these soldiers in her dream? Arise, O nation. For nations to rise, the human spirit must rise. Ah, Papa, African Papa, where have you been? Hunger in the children, hunger in the wife. What have you done, African Papa? You went into the hut and folded your hands and resigned to fate. Why, Papa? Papa Africa, arise and shine. Arise, Papa, for we believe in you. Arise, O nation. Sharpen your mind. Have no fear, but be vigilant. Vigilance is the name of the game. Throw your burdens down. Did Casely Hayford not say, if God has made you black or brown, that you are a great nation? Did David Diop not talk about Africa? Africa, my Africa. Africa, of whom my grandmother sings on the bank of the distant river. Is that not Africa? So why do you mourn when you should be rejoicing? Did Casely Hayford not say that you should rejoice and shout with laughter? Have you not heard that the beautiful ones have been burned? Have you not heard that the beautiful ones have been burned? Have you not heard that everything good has come? Victor Banjo was in prison. Victor Banjo fought for Biafra. Why? Why did Ojukwu execute Victor Banjo? Why? Was it just Victor Banjo? Did he not execute Emmanuel Ifajuna? Why? Why is Dele Farotimi so angry that he makes me smile? Say, as you look at time, as you look at events of the moment, have the understanding that they are the functions of our character. As you see the bandits of the time that runs into the streets of Jos, know that it is the function of our character. As you get angry with the policeman, know that the policeman is a representation of our character. As you disagree with the political class, know that it is the function of your negligence, the function of your character. A people deserve the government they get. Yes. What you are getting now, it is what you deserve. A land deserves the leadership it gets. A gift of sequins, letters to my wife. When last did you write a letter to your wife? O men of time, learn to write letters to your wives. How can you stay there and not write letters to your wife? You should have a file of letters you have written to your wife. If you have not written one, write one now. Mind you, I like reading sweet letters. You see this book I'm holding? It is a gift of sequins, letters to my wife. It is Victor Banjo's letters to his wife. Have you read letters from prison? Victor Banjo wrote letters, romantic letters to his wife. Are you romantic? Show it. Write a letter to your wife, a romantic letter to your wife, like Victor Banjo wrote to his wife. Who do not know how to write a letter? Then read Victor Banjo's letters and learn how to write letters. Say, Victor Banjo's daughter is on State Affairs. Of Lieutenant Colonel Victor Banjo. It is the story of Lieutenant Colonel Victor Banjo. The Victor Banjo story is a determined story. It refuses to go away. By the day, it gets more intense. So there must be something about Victor Banjo. So this edition of State Affairs is part of the journey into discovery, understanding the person of Lieutenant Colonel Victor Banjo. If you've read the book Why We Struck, written by Adewale Ademoyega, he writes, the only senior revolutionary officer who was not brought into the planning of the January 1966 coup at all was Lieutenant Colonel Banjo. This was because he had the view that the revolution should have a broader military base and an initial political base. On the contrary, I believed that any attempt to broaden the base or initiate political support would compromise the security of the planning and lead to our utter destruction. What is Adewale Ademoyega saying here? Victor Banjo's grandfather was a warrior. He was among the Ijebu soldiers defeated by the British at the Battle of Omigbodun. That is the family Victor Banjo came from. In 1953, Banjo enlisted in the Queen-owned Nigeria Regiment of the Royal West African Frontier Force, also known as the Nigerian Regiment of the Royal West African Frontier Force. He attended the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, the United Kingdom. He also obtained a degree in mechanical engineering, making him one of the few graduates in the Nigerian Army at the time. Some said that Victor Banjo was a socialist of the Marxist type. Some have written that his socialist ideas scared the colonial authorities, who were capitalists. He was the first Nigerian soldier to be sponsored for a degree course by the army. So one thing about this army officer is intellect. We are going to go into that. He was the first Nigerian director of electrical and mechanical engineering of the Nigerian Army. It is the story of Victor Banjo on this edition of State Affairs. Who is my guest? The daughter of Victor Banjo is on State Affairs. Hello, Professor Omigbodun. It's good to have you on State Affairs.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege. Thank you so much for inviting me to come.
Victor Banjo's daughter.
Yeah.
I can see Victor Banjo in your face. I can see the look alike. You were barely 3 when he was arrested.
Yes. Yes, I was barely 3. But like one of the things that really I'm delighted about is Victor Banjo. His story lives on through us, his children. I'm one of 4 children. And he has a very remarkable story. As his daughter, I'm very proud of him. As you said, he was arrested from our home. Well, he went to work. There was the January 1966 coup. And I think it was on Saturday. I may not get my dates exactly right, but either Saturday or Sunday. And from his letters, it appears that as soon as he learned about the coup, he didn't know anything about the coup. And it's quite clear. You just read from Ademoyega, who I actually met before he passed on. he came to see my mother when he was released from prison. He actually looked for us. And it was quite clear. And even from all my father's letters to my mother, letters to General Ironsi, letters to go on to everyone, it was quite clear that my father did not know anything about the January 66 coup. It's quite clear. Occasionally, I hear people ask me and say, oh, you know, your father was one of those who was involved. Whoever says that in this year 2025 has not done their homework. My father knew nothing about the January 1966 coup. What I have read, and from his letters, there was a problem on ground. There was a coup. And he did his best to support the leadership that emerged, because he said it in his letter, particularly in the letter he wrote to General Ironsi, that he rallied support for a military government under Ironsi. He spoke to others, spoke to soldiers. He actively rallied support. And on the 17th, which was a Monday, 17th of January 1966, about a few days to my 3rd birthday, he went to work. Part of what he was enthusiastic, how can we bring peace? How can we bring unity to this nation? Yes, there's been a coup, but let's do some damage control. Let's rally support. Let's see what we can do to make this nation grow. There had been a lot of problems in the nation. The nation had been battling with corruption and several other things. Unfortunately, he was arrested from work, and he never came back home.
He never came back home.
Never came back home. Never came back home.
He was arrested on the 17th of January.
Yes, he was arrested on the 17th of January.
1966.
1966.
2 days after the first coup in
Yes,
Nigeria.
yes. And up to today, I don't know who knows why he was arrested. I don't know, as his daughter, and why he was arrested. It remains a mystery to me. Why was our father arrested at work? And from his letters, even after he was arrested, he was taken to Kirikiri prison. He was mishandled. It's very, very, I say, clear in one of his letters. The letter he wrote to General Ironsi, and I can actually locate it and read from it.
The letter he wrote on the 1st of June.
Yes, on 1st of June, 1966.
You find that letter on page 51.
Yes.
Of this book.
Yes.
A Gift of Cigarettes. Letters to My Wife.
Yes.
This is a book written by Victor Banjo. Letters to his wife. So you can read.
Yes. So he wrote from federal prisons, Ikotikpene, on the 1st of June 1966. Lieutenant Colonel V.A. Banjo, BSc, Director of Electrical and Mechanical Engineering, Nigerian Army. 2. Major General J.T.U. Aguyi Ironsi, MVO, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Head of the National Military Government. My dear General, thank you for your letter of the 14th February. This will be my last letter to you while I remain in detention. I wrote to you from Kirikiri prisons on the 21st and 31st January 1966. And your letter to me of the 14th February in reply referred to my petition being under consideration. Number 2, I'm not aware of having written a petition to you. I wrote to you as my general, my leader, and my fellow officer in arms, as one from whom I should expect justice, fairness, and loyalty in the like measure as any of my fellow officers may expect to receive it from you. In the like measure as I have had the honor to give you, my colleagues, and my soldiers during my years of service, and in the like measure as is obligatory between gentlemen officers of a responsible army to maintain the highest traditions of our profession. I informed you that a grievous crime had been committed against my person and my liberty at a time of crisis in our country, when I was busy giving you my most loyal service. I pointed out certain facts to you which I felt you ought to have known about. Essentially, these were: A, that on the morning of Monday, 17th January 1966, I was arrested by Lieutenant Colonel G.T. Kurubu and Major P.A. Awunyana in the anteroom of the IGP's office for no ostentable reason while I was waiting to see you.
Was he with a gun that day?
What it appears was that my father, I wasn't there, of course.
Yes.
But there was, apparently he had a gun. And my father was a soldier.
Yeah.
Soldiers, you move around with guns. So he had a gun, and I think because he was so trusting, because I can't remember where I read it, but somebody asked him to see the gun outside the IGP's office, and he gave them the gun to look at, and was from there he was arrested, malhandled, maltreated, taken to Kirikiri, and then, of course, from Kirikiri to Kotikbene. And, there were some accusations.
If you look at that letter to Ironsi, if you look at D,
yes,
he said that some 2 weeks after my arrest,
yes,
I was informed by Major Ude at Kirikiri prisons that a signal had been sent out to all units that I had been arrested for attempting the life of the Supreme Commander.
Yes.
Which signal, if existent, must by its gross falsehood constitute a serious offense in law against its originator. Rested.
Well, there's a lot of speculation. But one thing was clear from his letter was that he said he was arrested 20, let me see which, he actually gave his exact location where he had been arrested from. And I don't know at what point they would have accused him of attempting to take the Supreme Commander's life. There's nowhere, yes, let me read it. If you look at number 6, the points, because he now gave points as regards, and in number 6, he says, I'm grateful for the arrangements you have made to enable my wife visit me here on the 14th May of 1966. That must have been in Ikoti Bene prison. She informs me that she visited you on the 5th of May, 1966, to inquire about my crime, and that you informed her that you knew nothing about my arrest until after it had been carried out. So, point number 1. He was accused of attempting to take General Ronsi's life. But right here, my father is writing to Ronsi that when my mother visited him, he said he did not know anything about the arrest. He didn't know anything. So there was no way, how was it if you're attempting to take somebody's life, you should be with the person. There should be evidence of an attempt. I think it was just a cooked up story. So she informs me that she visited you on the 5th of May, 1960, to inquire about my crime, and I informed her you knew nothing about my arrest until after it had been carried out. And then you have found it necessary to keep me in detention to protect my life in view of the rumors.
State Affairs with Edmondo Below is live.
Listen to your moment of power with Pastor.
In your article entitled Insecurity from Expansionist Terrorists, Not Conflict, is the wicked problem in Benue. Wicked problem in Benue. Why did you qualify problem as wicked?
Yeah, insecurity in Benue State and in North Central in recent times has become a wicked problem because it has defied, all solutions seemingly, and it is also making policy responses, flat. The policy responses are not hitting the right notes in terms of solving the problems. And I feel it's because it keeps mutating. That is, the symptoms it presents today are different from the ones presented yesterday. And it's important we keep our gaze fixed in tracking, the evolution or the trajectory of the problem. Our failure to do this is why we are giving an interpretation of yesterday to a problem of today. And that is why it has become a wicked problem, seemingly something that has refused to go away, a nagging problem.
You said they are launching systematic attack aimed at displacing and occupying communities through terror.
Yes.
And you said this is not conflict. Can you explain?
No. When you talk of conflict, you talk of criminality, you talk of violent conflict. It's important for us to understand that before you can talk of a conflict, that means two entities or two parties, at loggerheads, or have clashing perspectives or clashing interpretations, Now, such a dispute may become violent and it may not become violent. So at that point, when it is violent, you talk of a violent conflict. But in this particular case, you can't call it a conflict any longer. Why? Because you have a situation in which there's a deliberate, organized, and systematic attack, to dispossess a particular community or dislocate them or rip them of their land. And we have seen instances of this in other parts of the country. I'll give you an example, I think, from Gwe West. That is in the same Benue State, where I spoke to someone there. What is happening in many of these rural communities now is that many of the farmers, especially, are not even planting their seeds anymore. According to the woman, she told me we are now eating our crops because we are afraid of planting. Because, if we plant, we won't be able to harvest. And what do you see in turn is that these places are now occupied. So when I saw the call for reconciliation, I was worried that, okay, before you can talk of either a ceasefire or a reconciliation, it means the two parties in conflict must have come to a shared understanding that, okay, we need to put an end to the war between us. Let us explore options or ways out of this conflict. But in a situation in which I am determined to take your car away from you, or to take your clothes or your belongings away from you. That is no longer a conflict by any shred of analysis. What I'm doing is using the tactics of terror to attack.
Did Lamb fall out with him at any point?
Yes, prior to 2011, at the time that we were in AC, he left to go to AMPP.
Yeah.
The issue then was, I think a couple of people told him that Babalam was going to recontest as governor, and he had the plan to also contest. So I think that was where the issue came from.
So why did Babalam recontest?
He didn't want to contest.
Why?
Because I remember vividly that he told me clearly that, you see, the things that you do that gives you glory is the same thing that you will do that brings shame. I have been governor, even though I was not able to make a second term, but I left with glory. But I don't think the governor, His Excellency Abiola Ajimobi at the time, was patient enough.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
But you were not a soldier and you are not one.
Who knows what I might have been or not been at that time.
Do not die in their war.
It wouldn't have been their war, it would have been our own. That's just the reality. When I say do not die in their war, it was a call to clarity. When politicians are fighting their pitched battles and you go and take side with one politician, you just die for nothing. That's their own war. But when you identify your own interests and you stand behind it and you are prepared to fight and die for it, I would applaud you. Those are worthy deaths.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Throughout my period in school, there was nothing like cheating during the exams. I can defend my certificate any place, anywhere. I wasn't the best, and I wasn't the last. And even when I was in school, heading a school, I put my feet down that every child must study very hard. No cheating in any exam. But surprisingly, I was home at Onitsha 10 months ago, and a young girl living with one of my sons, in primary 6, I was asking her multiplication tables. She couldn't recite. At the time I asked her, how did you write your common entrance examination since you are preparing to go into secondary school? She said they contributed money and they gave to the teachers. They moved them from their school to another school, and they were dictating answers to them.
At the primary level?
Yes. So I tried to teach her 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times multiplication tables. She saw me as an enemy. So they want to continue that way. And those teachers that took them for common entrance examination would have passed through cheating. I will not encourage that.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
After my father was arrested on the 17th of January 1966, a few days later, I can't remember the exact dates, possibly the date will be recorded in the book, I'm not sure, General Gowon led a team of soldiers. My mother said there must have been over 100 of them to our house. She drove in, she went to pick us up from school, and she drove in and met the house surrounded with soldiers and guns. And General Gowon was somebody that was she knew him, was my father's friend. In fact, my father referred to him many times as a Christian, one of the Christian soldiers, that he had attributes of a Christian. He mentioned, although at some point he was a bit concerned about the way he treated him, because I will talk about that later. And Gowon reassured my mother that they had come to search the house. They were looking for guns. So, but my mother was in a panic. So many soldiers, anything can happen. And then she would have been remembering the families that had been killed. Some soldiers, father went, mother went. One of them was my father's very close friend, Brigadier Sam Ademulego. Ademulego.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
The last time I was in your house, I saw applied knowledge. I saw the kind of mini farms you had around you.
Yes.
And I knew I came to the house of somebody who studied agriculture, agric education.
Yes.
You are applying agric knowledge.
Yes. My lecturer at NCE, Mr. Nwokepo, taught us applied agric science. Everybody, as soon as you are arriving, the first thing you will do, year one, is to go and harvest yams planted by your seniors. And you must do it yourself. So at NCE level, we were taught right there on the farm. And every student must have 8 ridges of 20 meters each. And you have to nurse those things yourself. We had a horticultural farm where you plant both local and exotic crops. Your own. You go to the farm. And throughout my period as an agricultural science teacher, I established agric farms in virtually all the schools I taught.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
You said the middle class is in a constant race for survival.
But it is.
Even as the objective realities should have announced to it that it is fighting a lost battle against the forces of feudalism. You like that word, feudalism.
But that is the same. Look, when I speak about impunity, you must understand that what has battered the impunity is the need to preserve the feudal system. A feudal system governs Nigeria. The people who battered Nigeria, the British, they come from a background of a class system that had its root in feudalism, the monarchy. But the powers of the monarchy was curbed. They began curbing the powers of the monarchy with the Magna Carta. But unfortunately, when they came to Nigeria, Lord Lugard did not find a Magna Carta to curb the powers of the monarchy. And he found the most extreme and systemized in the northern part of Nigeria. So he fell in love with the Fulani Caliphate, the Sokoto Caliphate. He fell in love with the Kanem Bonu Empire. They were both more readily applicable to indirect rule.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Dele Farotimi is the author of the book Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution. The title of chapter 4 of the book is Birth of the Fulani Hegemony. Birth of the Fulani Hegemony. That is chapter 4 of Dele Farotimi's book, Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution. Dele Farutimi is also the author of the book Do Not Die in Their War. Do not die in their war. Dele Farutimi on state affairs.
You said the middle class is in a constant race for survival.
But it is.
Even as the objective realities should have announced to it that it is fighting a lost battle against the forces of feudalism. You like that word, feudalism.
But that is the same. Look, when I speak about impunity, you must understand that what has battered the impunity is the need to preserve the feudal system. A feudal system governs Nigeria. The people who battered Nigeria, the British, they come from a background of a class system that had its root in feudalism, the monarchy. But the powers of the monarchy was curbed. They began curbing the powers of the monarchy with the Magna Carta. But unfortunately, when they came to Nigeria, Lord Lugard did not find a Magna Carta to curb the powers of the monarchy. And he found the most extreme and systemized in the northern part of Nigeria. So he fell in love with the Fulani Caliphate, the Sokoto Caliphate. He fell in love with the Kanem Borno Empire. They were both more readily applicable to indirect rule. So Nigeria was founded on feudal foundations to varying degrees. In the East, where there wasn't a systemized rulership system, they raised one, created warrant chiefs. In northern Nigeria, even in parts where the Fulani influence had not reached, they extended it. Places that were not Islamized deliberately so that the slave stock could be kept in northern Nigeria, what you call the Middle Belt today, was largely un-Islamized deliberately, because if they were Islamized, they would not have been able to keep them as slaves. And slave trade was the most important of the trades sustaining the two Islamic empires in northern Nigeria. So they deliberately avoided conquering those parts so that it does not become
The jihadis.
The jihadists deliberately. Let me explain
Or
what
they could not
No.
conquer.
There were parts that they deliberately avoided conquering.
Okay.
You know, in Islamic jurisprudence, you have what you call the Dan Haber and the Dar Salam. The Dar Haber is where the unbelievers live. You can enslave the unbeliever. But if you conquer the land, they are forced to convert, and you cannot enslave a fellow Muslim. So they were deliberate about not conquering certain parts. What they did was that they built garrisons in places like Kotangora, Kotonkafe, Lafia. They built garrisons, and they would come during the plantings, like the season when people will plant, harvest. That's when the Fulanis will come with their cattle. They will stay in their garrisons, and from there they will go slave raiding. For centuries, before the British defeated them and then ended slavery. Slavery, I think, was still even allowed to some extent in northern Nigeria up until 1946 or thereabout. So you have a situation where Nigeria was founded on a feudal system. The feudalism that was prevalent in Fulani society has jumped host. That virus is in every state of Nigeria. Now all our governors are emirs. The president of Nigeria is a sultan. Your federal House of Representatives, the Senate, is just an alkali council. That's why it does exactly as the president demands. Your legislators, your judges are singing on his mandate, they will stand.
Did the judges sing?
Oh, bah.
They were quiet, weren't they?
So who was doing the singing?
The band.
Oh, it was the band.
Yeah.
Okay.
But except you are saying the judges are part of the band.
Well, as far as I can tell, there was a gathering of judges and they were busy singing on his mandate, they will stand.
Chapter 4 of your book, Birth of the Fulani Hegemony.
Yes.
Hegemonies are creations of history, you say. To understand and fully appreciate the impact of the Fulani hegemony over Nigeria, it is apposite that we examine the history of Nigeria and its very foundation. You have given us a brief of that history, right?
I can only try.
The British were the sole powers within the Nigerian space. Why did you choose this topic, the birth of the Fulani hegemony?
Because that is the root of the problem with which we are grappling today.
The root?
That is the root
How?
of Nigeria's problem. If you, every country, every nation in the world develops off the back of an hegemony, there would always be an overarching power that propels the growth of nations. If you look to the American state, for instance, you find very quickly that it was the WASPs, the West Anglo-Saxon Protestants, that built America. I'm not sure you'll find a single Catholic amongst the persons who sat down in Virginia to write the American Constitution. So it's always a select few in a larger society who usually take it upon themselves to bring their overarching philosophy to propel the whole. In Nigeria, the reality is that it is the Fulani hegemony that was favored from its foundations. And that hegemony is a feudalistic one. It is found on class. It believes that if you are born into a class, that's where you should stay. So if you are born a noble, you stay a noble. If you are born a peasant, you stay a peasant. If you are born to serve the noble class, you stay there and you serve them. There is rarely any migration between the classes. That was the feudal system. In Yoruba land, we didn't have that systemized environment. People could move more easily across the class lines. It was the same in the land of the Igbos and in most parts of southern Nigeria. But northern Nigeria was largely feudalized, whether you're talking about the Kanem Borno Empire or whether you were talking about the Sokoto Caliphate. And when the British came with their indirect rule, they sustained those systems. And those systems, that hegemony, emerged out of the ruin of the First Republic. It was that hegemony that took us to war in July 1966. It was that hegemony that prosecuted the Civil War.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Dele Farotimi tells a story there. Feudalism. He defines it and brings in the Fulani as the context. So what do we understand by feudalism? Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, on the wide savanna of northern lands, where the wind carried the songs of cattle bells, there lived a young Fulani boy named Sadiq. Sadiq was the son of a herder. Every morning, he followed his father across the grasslands, guiding their cattle under the rising sun. But there was something that troubled his mind. He says, "Father, these cattle we tend, the land we walk on, do they belong to us?" His father Bello looked at him with calm eyes shaped by years of obedience. "No, my son," he said quietly. "We live on land under the authority of the emir." Sadiq has heard about the emir, a powerful ruler who lived far away in a ground compound surrounded by guards, horses, and wealth. But he had never seen him. "Then why do we serve him?" Sadiq pressed. His father sighed. "Because above the emir is the sultan, the great authority over many lands. The sultan entrusts land to emirs, the emirs entrust it to district heads, and we live and work under them." Curiosity burned in Sadiq. So one day, he followed a caravan heading towards the emir's town. There he met Musa, a horseman in fine robes, a loyal warrior to the emir. "Why do you serve the emir?" Sadiq asked him. Musa replied, "Because he gives me responsibility, land to oversee, and honor. In return, I protect his authority. I defend his people. I fight when he calls." Sadiq thought deeply. So, the sultan gives power to the emir, and the emir gives power to men like you, and we serve from below. Musa nodded. That is how order is kept. When Sadiq returned home, his mind had changed. "So, this is the chain," he said to his father. "The sultan, the emir, the warriors, and then us." His father nodded slowly. "Yes, each depends on the other. Without the sultan, there is no authority. Without the emir, there is no control. Without the warriors, there is no protection. And without us," he paused, "there is no food, no wealth, no life." So, years passed, and Sadiq grew into a man. But he never forgot what he had seen. He understood now that this system, this arrangement of power, land, and loyalty, was like what scholars would later call feudalism. So, looking at this story of Sadiq, imagine Nigeria under this arrangement, under the present leadership, from local government to state to the presidency. It is the picture that Dele Farutimi paints. Now, what did Sadiq discover? Sadiq discovers a world where the Sultan stood at the top, holding ultimate authority. He cannot be challenged. And the emirs govern lands in the name of the Sultan. The warriors and title holders enforced power and maintain order on behalf of the Sultan. See, the police can beat you to death to defend the leadership. Understand it that way. The common people herders, farmers, and traders sustain the entire system through their labor, and they remain poor. So feudalism is a system of duty and protection, but also of hierarchy and limitation. That means if you were born into a poor family, you cannot come out of it. That is your strata in life. No matter what you do, you cannot dine with a sultan. So the emir lived in splendor. The warriors lived in honor. But the ordinary Fulani, like Sadiq's family, lived by endurance. And one night under the vast northern sky, Sadiq asked a question that had begun to sing across many lands and many cultures. Must power always sit so high? Why do people carry its weight below? That's a question for you. Must power always sit so high? Remember, even in the calm rhythm of cattle and wind, the human mind never stops questioning. And every system, no matter how ancient, must one day answer to those who dare to think beyond it. Are you with me? Every system, no matter how ancient, must one day answer to those who dare to think beyond it. A word is enough for the wise. Say, on the front page of the Punch is a picture of a mother. A picture of a mother cuddling her dead son. A picture of a mother cuddling her dead son. And she screams, "Avenge your death." Just mother gives dead son cutlass. It is symbolic. They've killed her son. And she screams, "Avenge your death." Just mother gives dead son cutlass. She now places cutlass in the hands of her dead son and sent her to work. Do dead people fight? That is the anguish of a mother. Now, listen to this. Defend yourselves. Northern Khan tells members. Do they need to be told? Defend yourselves. Northern Khan tells members. They have been waiting to be told. On the front page of the Punch, defend yourselves. Northern Khan. Khan is Christian Association of Nigeria. Khan tells members, if we don't chase them, they will torment us for 200 years. Listen, there's a rider on the front page of the Punch. If we don't chase them, they will torment us for 200 years. A word is enough for the wise. I speak no more. I go silent over our politics. I speak no more. Avenge your death. Just mother gives dead son cutlass. Let me read something to your hearing. I have a special book that I keep to myself. The title is The Declaration of Independence and other great documents of American history. 1775 to 1865. Now, the first document here is entitled, "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death." Give me liberty or give me death. It is a speech that was delivered by Patrick Henry on the 23rd of March, 1775. This speech gave birth to the American spirit, the spirit of war. Let me read part of it. It is written in Old English. He says, "There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve and violate those inestimable privileges for which we have been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, and which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight. I repeat it, we must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us." I just read from the speech that led to the birth of America, delivered by Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death. See, are you there? Let's read the last paragraph of that speech. After this speech, America went to war, and it became the War of Independence. He says, "It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry. They may cry peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. He who has ears, let him hear. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God," he echoed. "I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." I just read from the speech by Patrick Henry, delivered on the 23rd of March, 1775. A word is enough for the wise. The lines are open. Call the radio station. 070-694-93000. That is 070-694-93000 or 070-144-757-70. That is 070 144 75770. Say hello to the radio station. Good morning.
Good morning, Edmund. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, Okonji Patrick is my name, calling from Boluwaji area. I'm so happy with the discussion you brought this morning. Hearing the daughter of Victor Banjo and Dele Farutimi. Dele Farutimi is a person I respect so much. I love his ideas. Last week was actually when I had, I don't know.
This line is breaking.
Station. It was, the person was talking of a primary school pupil who is intending to transit to secondary school, done common entrance, and they was not able to demonstrate capacity. And the woman was wondering. I want to say that it's like a common thing now. Yes. In one of my daughter's school, private school, such things happen there. Such things, corruption, wrong ways of making children pass and things like that. The extent that they will not allow parents to enter the school. They will say parents should not come into the school. And when the children get home and tell their parents what they experience in school, if they get back to school, the teachers and the authorities of the school blame them for telling their parents what is happening in school. That is where we have found ourselves now.
Thank you.
So there must be vigilance, especially on private schools. There must be vigilance. Then to the other part of what I had you speak on, referring to the idea that the people deserve the government they have. I differ. I want to disagree with that, because we also look at the area where we talk of state capture. The people are not the ones generating the government they have. Using your word, hegemony. There is hooliganistic hegemony at play in Nigeria. So I will not agree with anybody that the people deserve the government that they have. It's not true. Some few persons, if you like, see them as hooligans, which they are actually. They are the ones who have seized. They make sure they seize power at all levels, seize power at all costs, and it doesn't stop at state levels. It's cut across the states of Nigeria and up to the presidency. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you for that rich contribution. A people deserve the government they get. Garbage in, garbage out. Enjoy the government that you have. I wish you well. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I can hear you.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling
Good morning,
the radio
sir.
station. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Edmond Odilo. I've been missing you all this time, and I'm happy I'm able to get through today. I'm commenting on the school with regards to cheating. I established a private school in 1994, and I testify to the fact that any child of JNEC group or school will never cheat because the foundation is laid on that. I made it explicit to them that if they cheat in examination, devil will cheat them in their lives. And so the children are always running away from that. But one thing I realize is that anytime there are exams, especially public exams, there is always an organization. They do not involve my children because they know they will expose them. They will put them in a separate place so that they will not mix them with those from the public schools. Even in the secondary school, most of the private schools should be, I don't know what the government is doing. A lot of private schools should be closed down. People think performance in external examination is performance in the school. It's a lie. Many of these children cannot perform in the universities. And because of the ignorance of the parents who are always, bothered about packaging, this and that, they will even come to you and beg for packaging. Can you imagine? I don't accept external candidates in GNC. We are very few, but I'm not begging for food. I established a school for the purpose of sanitizing the society and bringing up sound and good children. And concerning the government in the nation, with regards to military, civilian, whatever, the search for power, the ambition in power, I don't know, an average human being is power intoxicated. Everybody wants to be in power. You remember when Abiola was contesting, people asked him, you've had enough power on your own, enough money, enough affluence, what do you need this presidency for? He said, there is a difference between money and power. And somebody asked that, hey, if you enter into politics, Agba normally wonu owe, only if Agba no wonu Abiola, Agba no jejejeje amu akusibe. I made mesh when I had it on the television on that day, I said, hey, this man is very funny. Agbana may not enter into riches, but Agbana can enter and destroy life eternally. And what happened? I think that people should sit up and realize that power belongs only to God. Thank you, my dear brother. God bless you. Lord will keep you for us for long.
Thank you. Thank you for calling the radio station. The lines are open. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Well, I can't hear you, but if you can hear me, as regard the woman whose son died in Jos, what the woman did was within the realms of the fact that we human beings, we are spirit in body and in the physical world. So what I mean is that it is equally within the realms of the African world view of the unborn, of the living and of the dead, in the sense that Yoruba African people, we believe in the fact that those who are died, their spirits are still very much with us. That's why in Yoruba land we have Babatunde, Iyabode. When my own brother was born some years back, before he died, there was a mark when he was sick and they tried to burn his leg and he eventually died. When he incarnated, that sign was there. And that's why they renamed him another name that he was bearing before he died. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for calling. Call the radio station Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station. Hello. Hello. All right, thank you. So you stay tuned, stay cool.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Splash FM 105.5.
are seeing there, if we go by empirical evidences and even the lived experiences of these people, and when you, I think the submission by the traditional ruler, gives what we call an emic perspective in anthropology, that is an insider's perspective based on his lived experience. So my worry now is that we have to avoid this hegemonic interpretation of issues. That is, the moment the popular media or the international organizations call something, give a label, we just go to and follow it, while ignoring the lived experiences, the lived realities of the people involved. Fine, their interpretations may be tainted by bias, but it's not sufficient to ignore it because of that. I feel some of these popular interpretations.
In your article entitled Insecurity from Expansionist Terrorists, Not Conflict, is the wicked problem in Benue. Wicked problem in Benue. Why did you qualify problem as wicked?
Yeah, insecurity in Benue State and in North Central in recent times has become a wicked problem because it has defied, all solutions seemingly, and it is also making policy responses, flat. The policy responses are not hitting the right notes in terms of solving the problems. And I feel it's because it keeps mutating. That is, the symptoms it presents today are different from the ones presented yesterday. And it's important we keep our gaze fixed in tracking, the evolution or the trajectory of the problem. Our failure to do this is why we are giving an interpretation of yesterday to a problem of today. And that is why it has become a wicked problem, seemingly something that has refused to go away, a nagging problem.
You said they are launching systematic attack aimed at displacing and occupying communities through terror.
Yes.
And you said this is not conflict. Can you explain?
No. When you talk of conflict, you talk of criminality, you talk of violent conflict. It's important for us to understand that before you can talk of a conflict, that means two entities or two parties, are loggerheads, or have clashing perspectives or clashing interpretations, Now, such a dispute may become violent and it may not become violent. So at that point, when it is violent, you talk of a violent conflict. But in this particular case, you can't call it a conflict any longer. Why? Because you have a situation in which there's a deliberate, organized, and systematic attack, to dispossess a particular community or dislocate them or rip them of their land. And we have seen instances of this in other parts of the country. I'll give you an example, I think from Goe West. That is in the same Benue State, where I spoke to someone there. What is happening in many of these rural communities now is that many of the farmers, especially, are not even planting their seeds anymore. According to the woman, she told me we are now eating our crops. because we are afraid of planting. Because, if we plant, we won't be able to harvest. And what do you see in turn is that these places are now occupied. So when I saw the call for reconciliation, I was worried that, okay, before you can talk of either a ceasefire or a reconciliation, it means the two parties in conflict must have come to a shared understanding that, okay, we need to put an end to the war between us. Let us explore options or ways out of this conflict. But in a situation in which I am determined to take your car away from you, or to take your clothes or your belongings away from you, that is no longer a conflict by any shred of analysis. What I'm doing is using the tactics of terror to to attack you, to oppress you, or so that is what we are seeing there. If we go by empirical evidences and even the lived experiences of these people, and I think the submission by the traditional ruler, gives what we call an emic perspective in anthropology, that is an insider's perspective based on his lived experience. So my worry now is that we have to avoid this hegemonic interpretation of issues. That is, the moment the popular media or the international organizations call something, give a label, we just go to and follow it, while ignoring the lived experiences, the lived realities of the people involved. Fine, their interpretations may be tainted by bias, but it's not sufficient to ignore it because of that. So I feel some of these popular interpretations flow from this liberalist thinking of peace or of
State
issues.
Affairs with Edmondo Below is live.
Contemporary account of the coup will tell you that after the coup on January 15, there was widespread jubilation, even in northern Nigeria, particularly Kaduna.
You liked the coup?
Sorry?
You liked the coup?
Unfortunately, I wasn't alive at the time. I might have taken part in it. But as far as I'm as a student of history,
you said if you were alive?
If I was alive, I would have taken part in that coup.
In that coup?
Oh, yes, I would have taken part. Inevitably.
State Affairs with Edmondo Below is live.
And when 2011 came, there was this report that Baba Lam wasn't considering Ajimobi.
No, of course he was not.
He was considering Lanley.
He was considering Senator Femi Lanley, Senator Soji Akombi, and a host of others.
Why was Ajimobi not in the picture?
Because he had not returned back to the party. It was last minute that he came. It was last minute that they called for a reconciliation. Our father in Lagos, who is now the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Shiwaju, Baba Bisi Akonde, Baba Oshoba, they called for a reconciliation. They brought Governor Ajimobi of blessed memory to Felele, and they settled it. And the argument after that was, it was easy for the Progressive family to win the election with Senator Abiola Ajimobi as the candidate, coming from the background of how he was able to pull the vote when he was in AMPP.
State Affairs with Edmondo Below is live.
Throughout my period in school, there was nothing like cheating during the exams. I can defend my certificate any place, anywhere. I wasn't the best, and I wasn't the last. And even when I was in school, heading a school, I put my feet down that every child must study very hard. No cheating in ní exam. But surprisingly, I was home at Onitsha 10 months ago, and a young girl living with one of my sons, in primary 6, I was asking her multiplication tables. She couldn't recite. At the time I asked her, how did you write your common entrance examination since you are preparing to go into secondary school? She said they contributed money and they gave to the teachers. They moved them from their school to another school, and they were dictating answers to them.
At the primary level?
Yes. So I tried to teach her 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times multiplication tables. She saw me as an enemy. So they want to continue that way. And those teachers that took them for common entrance examination would have passed through cheating. I will not encourage that.
State Affairs with Edmondo Below is live.
Because I know for many years after this incident, this happenings, she used to have nightmares. You know, she'd wake up in the night screaming, saying that I wrote in the book, somebody's trying to suffocate her, choke her. And then she said she would have dreams. And, you know, when we were living at 21B Cooper Road, there were these acacia trees in front of our house. And she said the trees would start off as trees and then they would become soldiers marching, was in her dreams, towards her, pointing guns.
State Affairs with Edmondo Below is live. State Affairs with Edmondo Below is live.
But you were not a soldier and you are not one.
Who knows what I might have been or not been at that time?
Do not die in their war.
It wouldn't have been their war, it would have been our own. That's just the reality. When I say do not die in their war, it was a call to clarity. When politicians are fighting their pitched battles and you go and take side with one politician, you just die for nothing. That's their own war. But when you identify your own interests and you stand behind it and you are prepared to fight and die for it, I would applaud you. Those are worthy deaths.
State Affairs with Edmondo Below is live.
The program is State Affairs on Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station. Mr. Victor Banjo went to work and never returned. He never returned home. Victor Banjo's daughter is asking what happened to her daddy. Victor Banjo's daughter is sad that the mystery behind her daddy's death is yet to be unraveled. She is Professor Yinka Omigbodun, former provost of the College of Medicine, University of Ibadan. Victor Banjo's daughter is on State Affairs.
Was it that Ironsi deceived your mommy?
Well, my father said here, I believe you. But then, as I pointed out before, the world conscious is less world conscience is less trusting. It will ask you to vindicate yourself. It will want to know how it is possible that one of your most senior officers, who was spending his time and energy loyally assisting you to restore order into the country, was treacherously arrested within 20 feet of you and falsely accused of trying to take your life. And all this was done without your knowledge or approval. It will want to know how it happened that the main perpetrators of this crime were suddenly elevated after my arrest. The one, Lieutenant Colonel G.T. Kurubu, appointed commander of the Air Force and a supreme counselor, and the other, P.A. Auna, promoted substantive lieutenant colonel. I think let my father speak for himself.
So from that letter, he didn't
Yes.
really believe Ironsi.
Oh no. Well, yes, there appears to have been some collusion. Because my father wasn't even near Ironsi from this letter. And when my mother went to see Ironsi, he said he didn't know anything about my father's arrest until after it happened.
You know, he played a huge role in countering the January 1966 coup.
Yes.
He helped Ironsi to attain the seat of head of state.
Yes, he rallied support.
And from this book,
yes,
Adewale Ademoyega said the only senior revolutionary officer, that means Victor Banjo, was revolutionary.
Yeah.
Do you think that scared Ironsi?
You know, all that is speculation. All that is, I can't say, because it's hard to know what was going on in somebody in his mind. But generally speaking, my father was innocent, but he was removed from the center of action and put in prison for reasons best known to the leadership. I don't know who was behind it, but it appeared like there were some people who had concerns about my father.
You know, he was brilliant.
And they didn't want him around. They felt threatened. I don't know who, and I'm not mentioning names.
It might be Ironsi. He was the commander-in-chief, and his boys arrested Victor Banjo when Victor Banjo came to see the head of state. It might be Ironsi, don't you think so?
I don't have that evidence. From what my mother wrote and told my father, General Ironsi said he did not know anything about my father's arrest. So I will just go with what he said to my mother. Whether he was feeling threatened or whether others were feeling threatened, because, you know, many times, and I'm not referring to any particular person, there are many times you have people in leadership, but they're not really the ones making decisions. The people around them are making decisions for them. And if a leader is not strong, if a leader does not have that will or vision, they can be, you know, dissuade, and they would do things that even they themselves may not even fully understand. So, but I'm just speaking generally.
You see, Victor Banjo says, I'm grateful for the arrangement you have made to enable my wife to visit me here on the 14th of May 1966.
Yeah.
Victor Banjo's wife, your mother. Here, her pain began. Her husband had been arrested. You know, she must have gone through a lot. How was she able to cope during that time?
You know, I was young.
Yeah.
So it's hard to imagine what my mother went through. And, I wrote at a point in this book, because I wrote the prologue and epilogue, that at some point in time, because I'm a professor of psychiatry, and I think it's important that we don't hide things. I suspect my mother developed post-traumatic stress disorder at the time, and she suffered from that condition for years. It's a condition you have when you have been subjected to very serious trauma. Because I know for many years after this incident, this happenings, she used to have nightmares. She'd wake up in the night screaming, saying that I wrote in the book, somebody's trying to suffocate her, choke her. And then she said she would have dreams. And, when we were living at 21B Cooper Road, there were these acacia trees in front of our house. And she said the trees would start off as trees, and then they would become soldiers marching, was in her dreams, towards her, pointing guns. And I think that episode started because after my father was arrested on the 17th of January 1966, a few days later, I can't remember the exact dates, possibly the date will be recorded in the book, I'm not sure, General Gowon led a team of soldiers. My mother said there must have been over 100 of them to our house. She drove in, she went to pick us up from school, and she drove in and met the house surrounded with soldiers and guns. And General Gowon was somebody she knew him, was my father's friend. In fact, my father referred to him many times as a Christian, one of the Christian soldiers, that he had attributes of a Christian, he mentioned, although at some point he was a bit concerned about the way he treated him, because I will talk about that later. And Gowon reassured my mother that they had come to search the house. They were looking for guns. But my mother was in a panic. So many soldiers, anything can happen. And then she would have been remembering the families that had been killed. Some soldiers, father went, mother went. One of them was my father's very close friend, Brigadier Sam Ademulego. Ademulego. So that would have been at the back of her mind. They were still reliving. She was so, fresh with all those traumas. And now she has 100 soldiers to deal with. To cut a long story short, they went round the house searching, and she had all of us young, small children. In fact, my brother was 6 months old.
Your younger brother? Yes,
the last born. And they couldn't, so they went all the rooms, searched everywhere, and they took some of my father's things. There was this cabinet that contained all certificates, birth certificates, marriage certificates, land paper, everything. You have a cabinet in your house where you keep all your documents. My father had bank accounts abroad, and so on and so forth. He had a business, he had business partner, everything was in that cabinet. They couldn't open it. My mother couldn't find the key. I think she was confused. She wanted them to leave. And they also took, I think they said they took his radio and some other things. So they said they because my mother couldn't open it, they took the cabinet away. That day, with the soldiers led by General Yakubu Gowon.
He was the chief of army staff on that.
Yes. So he came to the house and they took it away. He told my mother she should not worry, that they will break it open and return it in a few days. Today, that happened in 66 to today. We have not seen anything. That cabinet has not been returned. But it did two things to my mother. that experience, with all the background experiences of the killings, but that singular experience affected her mental health. And she started to have nightmares year by year by year by year. She suffered greatly. But aside from that, everything that we had was taken with that, all the documents. Because we may come to that, but let me let you know, Mr. Obilo, that we did not get anything. We lost everything. When you talk about everything, my father had landed property. It's all there in the letters. It was, we did not get anything because all the documentation was gone. So it affected my mother's mental health, and it just took everything from us. Till today, we don't know where those things are. And so more or less, like I mentioned, we are children of grace. We are children of grace. The only thing that we were able to get back was money, because my father drove to the office that the day of he was arrested. He had a Mercedes-Benz car. He had two, actually. So he drove to the office. He parked his car in the office and he was arrested. And the army sold his car. So my daddy's very good friend, a loyal friend. My father had friends from all over Nigeria. Some of his best friends, he was a real nationalist. This was Uncle John Ediale. He was from Isha side.
In a doorstep.
Yes. He had other friends. I mean, his best man was Rex Apofure. And he also had another friend called them the Izzies. So he was very broad-minded in thinking.
Ojukwu was his friend.
Oh yes.
He kept mentioning Ojukwu in the
letter. Yes. But as I was saying, that car, the Uncle John saw the cutting when the army advertised the car for sale. We were in Sierra Leone then, so he kept it. So my mother went up and down. So we eventually got the money for the I think they sold the car for, was very small money then. I can't remember. But my mother eventually got the money in 1978.
How did she get the money back?
The army gave her. The money they used to sell, it came to about 300 naira or something. The money they used, because she had evidence that they sold my father's car. And it came at a very good time, because that year my senior brother and older brother and sister were entering University of Ife. And she was really desperate for money. She didn't have money. So she used that money to buy like suitcase and so on and so forth.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
See Daddy Chief Bolan, you are there.
Yes, Edmond.
Good morning.
I have tried. Good morning. I've tried to call. In fact, anytime anybody is talking about Victor Banjo, I'm always interested, because I've from long been an advocate of his being given posthumous honor. Victor Banjo and Emmanuel Feudalism deserve to be given posthumous honor. You see, if Tinubu can remember to grant somebody who the colonial ambassador gave pardon, and some other irrelevant ones. You see, I wonder why Mr. Banjo and Emmanuel Feudalism will not come into the show. You remember, Mama Mbaka was granted pardon because Babangida regretted killing his married best man. It was Mama Mbaka. Victor Banjo was executed by Ojukwu, not by Yakubu Gowon. He was executed by and Ojukwu, when Ojukwu was granted pardon by Shagari, he became a free man. Even as in contested election, you can imagine that. Ojukwu, I am hearing for the first time from you now this morning that Ojukwu was a friend of Victor Banjo. What was Victor Banjo's offense? They said he was planning to overthrow Ojukwu in Biafra. He was captured from Benin, driven to Enugu and executed, along with Emmanuel Ifeanyi Jr. Nigeria should think. I wonder why we couldn't think. Nigeria should be able to think. I don't know how we think in Nigeria. But I'm using this medium to appeal to President Tinubu he should be giving those two people should be given posthumous pardon and should be honored in Nigeria. They are honorable, they should be honored. Let me just stop here, Edmond. I have a lot to say about this issue I'm talking about. Thank you very much. God bless you, Edmond.
Thank you. Thank you, Alhaji Bolariwa, for calling the radio station. Thank you. The lines are open. Good morning. Good morning. Have you read the book The Sokoto Caliphate by Murray Last? The Sokoto Caliphate by Murray Last. The lines are open.
Hello?
Good morning.
Yeah, top of the morning to you, Edmond. And top of the morning to everyone under the sound of my voice this morning. My name is Omigbodun, the city boy. No, my take has to do with the high level of killing the innocent people in Plateau State. Well, I think this is it's getting worrisome and uncalled for. And I'm appealing to Mr. President, Ashwad Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to please more be proactive on this level of insecurity. And secondly, I have a question for the statement credited to the Khan. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. The Khan said they should defend themselves. My question is this. Christians should defend themselves with empty-handed or with Bible or with the knife or the cutlass. They can't defend themselves with empty-handed. The primary assignment for the government is to provide to protect the life and the life and the property of the citizens. So I don't know how to say something about this thing. They can't defend themselves. They can't protect themselves with empty-handed. There's nothing they can do. We are appealing to the government. It's not only the federal government. You know, the security is what concerns every one of us. We are appealing to the federal government, the state, and the local government to please do the needful. We can't continue like this. We can't continue to allow these bandits killing people. It's not just like that. No, this is not a bandit country. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me remind you that whatever is happening today is a function of our government. It's a function of our leadership. It's a function of our followership. It is the sum of the Nigerian character. It will happen again. As long as the character remains constant, it will happen again. It will worsen. It's when a people change their character that their situation will change. When they change their politics, their situation will change. A people deserve the government they get. A people deserve the circumstances they find themselves. You know why? If they don't want it, they will change it. When it's time to change it, they will. For now, enjoy your government. And let me warn. Men of violence, men of corruption, men of low moral virtue can never defeat terrorism. The defeat of terrorism is not a function of guns. However, when it is said that people should defend themselves, that message is clear. Their destiny is in their palm. If they continue to wait for government, they will continue to die. By the way, what is government? Government is the people. If government cannot exert its ability to secure the people, that government has lost its value. Then if you wait for that government, you will die. A word is enough for the wise. Arise, O nation. Vigilance. 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 For nations to rise, the human spirit must rise. Call the radio station 070 694 930 00 070 144 757 70. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Radio Man. This is Dr. Ken from. Hello, are you with me?
Yes, make your point.
Great. You see, until Nigerians arise to do the needful, we can no longer depend on the assurance of government in whatever segment, either federal, state, or local government. But there is a time in this nation communities will stand to secure the land. There are places in Yoruba land that I knew that Fulani can never enter. And it's not that they have, they are guiding their community with kinetic or whatever foreign arms. There are local things that we are known for, that we used to defend ourselves. We don't need to carry arms. We don't need to face them. We don't need to go via guerrilla war. There are things that we believe in as sons and daughters of Oduduwa that we knew that are still working, that are still very relevant. We have our obas, we have our kids, we have our ballets. Let them go into what we believe, what we used to guide ourselves. And so if they are doing their madness in the north, they should not bring it down south here. The southern governors, the southern chiefs and obas and obis should rise up and make sure that their communities and their citizens are protected. We can no longer rely on the assurance of government. They will keep on condemning, and the worst will continue to happen. It happens in Bauchi, they went there, they condemn. It happens in Plateau, they will go there, they will condemn. It will happen in other places until people decide. See why that Juma said it several years ago. You people should go and defend yourself. And somebody is telling me, what would they defend? You defend yourself with what you have. If an robber attack you at the middle of the night and you have a knife in your house that you're using to cook, won't you use it to defend yourself? We can no longer wait or stand the assurance of government. They have disappointed us. They have failed, all of them. And so we cannot continue to lose life. We are counting dead bodies as if we are counting chickens. In a nation that Nigerian leaders are living in effluent, flying all around, wasting all our resources and our money. Obilo, thank you very much.
If the Obas are also part of the problem, let them make the sacrifice for money tonight. The gods will not answer them. If the Obas are not part of the problem, let them come out and speak to the thunders. Okay? The gods will not solve this problem, because those who we call the gods are part of the problem. Let's leave the God out of this. Leave the gods alone. Please. Okay. Okay. Good morning. Why is this call so faint? I can hear him well. Let's bring in Dele Farotimi again. Dele Farotimi is the author of the books Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution and Do Not Die in Their War. Dele Farotimi on State Affairs.
Did the hegemony take us to war? And how did that happen?
If you really look at it, you had the coup of January 1966. If you even read the coup speech, particularly the one by Nzogu, you'll see very clearly that it was a rebellion against a class. Now, the counter coup was a reaction to what happened in January.
Was that sponsored by the Fulani?
If you listen to the historical accounts or you read the historical accounts, you find very quickly that what happened was that the NPC elements that had lost power in January worked largely to unite opposition against Ironsi and the military, that the people who came to power in January. So what you had in July was a reaction to what happened in January. Now, that could have ended at Aburi. It did not end. It only began, or at least calcified, with Aburi, because after Aburi it became clear that we could not arrive at a common ground.
But some have said Aburi was the end of Nigeria if that agreement was implemented.
If Aburi that was not implemented, what was implemented is what has now ended Nigeria, hasn't it?
No, Nigeria is still here.
Yeah, like a zombie.
Nigeria is still
Jekyll
here.
and Hyde.
Nigeria is still here.
Serving nobody's interest.
Serving the interest of some people.
Of a few. So it's still here, but as what? It's not beneficial to the victims. Even the persons who believe that they are beneficiaries of Nigeria are actually victims of Nigeria themselves.
So Fulani hegemony led us to war.
Fulani hegemony led us to war because reason flew out of the window.
But Gowon became the head of state, not a Fulani.
Well, here is the thing. Since you're talking about Gowon, let's go there. Gowon was not the highest ranking member of the military. Gowon was the middle ground position, the compromise. He was the only one that was acceptable to the actual plotters of the coup. Muritala Mohammed and the others. They were willing to accept Gowon. And if you know the history of Nigeria at that time, you realize that even settling for Gowon was real politic. It wasn't the desire of the coup plotters. It would have been beyond the pale to refuse Admiral Way, refuse what's the name of this one, Ogundipe, and then insist that even Gowon, who was then the next in rank from the north, he was the highest ranking northern officer. If you are now saying you don't want Gowon because he's a Christian, that was where the problem would have started, because the bulk of the officer corps after the 1960s, after the July coup, were from the Middle Belt. So there was no way anybody would have been able to make the argument that it was Muritala Mohammed that should then take power over and above Gowon. How would you have explained that to the likes of T.Y. Danjuma, a fellow Christian like Gowon?
But it was a coup.
It was a coup, quite all right. But even in military circle, it's usually the highest ranking officer that you put in place now. And in this case, you've already discounted at least 2 officers of southern origin who are higher in rank.
They were not part of the coup.
You see, that's the thing. If they were not part of the coup, if they had allowed that sentiment to take hold, what would have happened was that it would have been easier to pigeonhole the coup of July 1966 as a Fulani coup, just like they tagged the coup of January an Igbo coup. It would have then been very easy to tag the July 1966 coup a Fulani coup.
Was the January coup an Igbo coup?
Of course not. But that was the propaganda. The truth is usually the first casualty in war.
But they took out the head of the so-called Fulani hegemony.
Look, the person, if you look at the person of Kaduna Nzogo dispassionately, you'll find very quickly that Kaduna Nzogo was more of an Hausa man than an Igbo man.
Does that matter? His name is Chukuma.
You see, the fact that the truth does not matter is why we are where we are. When the truth does not matter, when you subjectify the truth to the point where it loses its potency, you arrive at destinations as insane as Nigeria.
Do not forget, you have concluded that it is an indigent state, not a citizen state. So Nzogo was not an indigent.
See, this indigent citizen thing that we've done to ourselves, I've done a fantastic job of guaranteeing the sustainability of the evil that has captured all of us. A person lived all his life in Kaduna to the point where you even had to take the name of the city as part of his own name. All his personal staff, including the doctor who treated him because of the wound he got in the exercise that morning, that doctor was Fulani. The man would not take food or medication from anyone else except his own inner cabal. All of whom are northerners. It was just convenient to label it an Igbo coup. Contemporary account of the coup will tell you that after the coup on January 15, there was widespread jubilation, even in northern Nigeria, particularly Kaduna.
You liked the coup?
Sorry?
You liked the coup?
Unfortunately, I wasn't alive at the time. I might have taken part in it. But as far as I'm concerned, as a student of history,
you said if you were alive?
If I was alive, I would have taken part in that coup.
In that coup?
Oh yes, I would have taken part. Inevitably. If you took the time to
read,
read,
a bloody coup.
Oh yes, it was. Sometimes it's necessary.
But remember, in your book, you are not recommending violence.
I am not a violent man.
In your book, you stated it clearly.
I am still stating it today that I would avoid violence where and when I can.
But you would have joined in Nzogo coup.
That coup would have had me participating. It was a function of the times. How old was Nzogo? I was a young man. If I was that age, when I was that age, let me share something with you. I think it was 1993, after the annulment of June 12th. There was a collection, there were a few of us. We were thinking of raiding police stations to collect guns to start a guerrilla warfare in this country. That was in 1993. How old was I? I was in my 20s. We were young enough, romantic enough to believe that we could change things, if not by the force of our personality, then certainly by force. So if I was alive in 1966, if I'd seen the same evil that them Kaduna Nzogo had seen, and I was at that age, I would most definitely have been part and parcel of that coup.
But you were not a soldier, and you are not one.
Well, who knows what I might have been or not been at that time.
Do not die in their war.
It wouldn't have been their war, it would have been our own. That's just the reality. When I say do not die in their war, it was a call to clarity. When politicians are fighting their pitched battles and you go and take side with one politician, you just die for nothing. That's their own war. But when you identify your own interests and you stand behind it and you are prepared to fight and die for it, I would applaud you. Those are worthy deaths.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
You see, today we gather around the radio. Not this radio. Not the polished device in your hand or the slick speaker on your shelf. I mean that radio. The wooden one. The one with the crackling static and the glowing dial. That one that sat in the corner of every sitting room, every village square, every palm wine joint across Nigeria. You remember that old school radio? That one on a Harmattan morning in January 1966. Remember that date? It changed everything. Let me paint you a picture. The night has passed, but the night has not passed. It has always changed shape. The gunfire has stopped sounding, but it still rings in the ears of those who heard it. The bodies have been removed, but the blood has not been washed away. In Kaduna, the Saudanas Palace sits hollow and smoldering. It was remembering what they witnessed. In Lagos, the Prime Minister's home stands silent, its master gone, murdered and dumped by the roadside like a sack of yams. In Ibadan, a 6-year-old boy who was promised his father would leave clutches that promised like a talisman, not yet knowing that his father's survival is the exception, not the rule. Nigeria wakes confused. News travels slowly. In 1966, there are no tweets, no breaking news alerts, no live update. There is only rumor riding on the Harmattan wind. There is only the market woman who heard from the trader, who heard from the soldier's wife that something terrible has happened. There is only fear, that cold, creeping fear that comes when you know that the world has shifted, but you cannot yet see it. And then salvation arrives in the form of static. Say. The radios crackled to life. The usual programs are cancelled. The usual voices are silent. For a long moment, there is only the hiss of uncertainty. And then a voice, young, clear, confident, a voice that does not stutter or apologize, a voice that speaks as though it has been waiting all the while to make this point. The voice comes. People of Nigeria. The voice belongs to Major Kaduna Nzogu. He is Igbo by blood, Northern by birth, Sandhurst by training. He is a soldier who has just become a revolutionary, a shooter who has just become a prophet. And he is about to tell Nigeria who it is. Here is what I want you to understand. Violence is mute. It can destroy, but it can explain itself. Did I say it can explain itself? No. I mean, violence cannot explain itself. Take note, take note. A bullet writes no manifesto. A grenade composes no poetry. I hope you know. The men who wield violence, if they want their violence to mean something, must become poets. Did I say that? They must reach into the chaos that they have created and pull out a story. Am I pulling out a story? But I have not created a chaos. The men of violence, to make their violence have meaning, must name the enemies. They must frame the mission. They must baptize bloodshed as rebirth. So here is Nzogu standing before a microphone in Kaduna, holding not a gun, but a script. The guns have done their work. Now, words must do theirs. And what words they are? Listen. Our enemies are the political profiteers, the swindlers, the men in high and low places that seek bribes and demand 10%. Can you hear it? Okay, you didn't hear it. Our enemies are the political profiteers, the swindlers, the men in high and low places that seek bribes and demand 10%. You've heard it now? The cadence of a sermon, the rhythm of a revival. The voice comes again. Those that have corrupted our society and put the Nigerian political calendar back by their words and deeds. You hear the voice. The voice does not say, "We killed the Prime Minister." The voice says, "We removed the parasite." How? The voice that came on radio did not say, "We shot the Saudana in his home." The voice says, "We have excised the cancer." How? The voice did not say, "We've seized power by force." The voice says, "We've rescued the nation from collapse." Did they? This is the acme of political rhetoric. This is how murder becomes martyrdom. This is how mutiny becomes liberation. This is how frightened soldiers become founding fathers. But come, here is the terror. Here is the terror. In that moment, sitting by that radio, millions of Nigerians feel something they've not felt in years. They feel hope. The politician who demanded a bribe before approving pension, gone. The minister who built a mansion while their village had no water, gone. The tribalists who divided them for votes, gone. Nzogu's voice reaches into their chest and finds the place where disappointment lives, that hard, that dry place where dreams go to die. And Nzogu waters it with possibility. He says, we promise freedom from fear, freedom from oppression, freedom from inefficiency. Who does not want that? He says, we promise to build a nation where everyone can hold his head high. Who does not long for that? He says, we promise to destroy the old Nigeria and build a new one. And in that moment, sitting by that radio, you believe him, right? I believe him, right? We all believe him, right? But here is the trap. Words can promise what violence cannot deliver. Nzogu can speak of freedom, but he has just imposed martial law. He can speak of unity, but he has just deepened every ethnic wound. He can speak of a new Nigeria, but he has just guaranteed that the old Nigeria will fight back with everything it has. Have we learned? Have we not learned? Anyway, I can't even explain what I have just read. Help me. It is Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station. The program is State Affairs. In your article entitled Insecurity from Expansionist Terrorists, Not Conflict, is the wicked problem in Benue. Wicked problem in Benue. Why did you qualify problem as wicked?
Yeah, insecurity in Benue State and in North Central in recent times has become a wicked problem because it has defied, all solutions seemingly, and it is also making policy responses, flat. The policy responses are not hitting the right notes in terms of solving the problems. And I feel it is because it keeps mutating. That is, the symptoms it presents today are different from the ones presented yesterday. And it's important we keep our gaze fixed in tracking, the evolution or the trajectory of the problem. Our failure to do this is why we are giving an interpretation of yesterday to a problem of today. And that is why it has become a wicked problem, seemingly something that has refused to go away, a nagging problem.
You said they are launching systematic attack aimed at displacing and occupying communities through terror.
Yes.
And you said this is not conflict. Can you explain?
No. When you talk of conflict, you talk of criminality, you talk of violent conflict. It's important for us to understand that before you can talk of a conflict, that means two entities or two parties, are loggerheads, or have clashing perspectives or clashing interpretations, Now, Such a dispute may become violent, and it may not become violent. So at that point, when it is violent, you talk of a violent conflict. But in this particular case, you can't call it a conflict any longer. Why? Because you have a situation in which there's a deliberate, organized, and systematic attack, to dispossess a particular community or dislocate them or rip them of their land. And we have seen instances of this in other parts of the country. I'll give you an example, I think, from Goe West. That is in the same Benue State, where I spoke to someone there. What is happening in many of these rural communities now is that many of the farmers, especially, are not even planting their seeds anymore. According to the woman, she told me we are now eating our crops because we are afraid of planting. Because, if we plant, we won't be able to harvest. And what do you see in turn is that these places are now occupied. So when I saw the call for reconciliation, I was worried that, okay, before you can talk of either a ceasefire or a reconciliation, it means the two parties in conflict must have come to a shared understanding that, okay, we need to put an end to the war between us. Let us explore options or ways out of this conflict. But in a situation in which I am determined to take your car away from you, or to take your clothes or your belongings away from you, that is no longer a conflict by any shred of analysis. What I'm doing is using the tactics of terror to attack you, to oppress you, or so that is what we are seeing there. If we go by empirical evidences and even the lived experiences of these people, and I think the submission by the traditional ruler, gives what we call an emic perspective in anthropology, that is an insider's perspective based on his lived experience. So my worry now is that we have to avoid this hegemonic interpretation of issues. That is, the moment the popular media or the international organizations call something, give a label, we just go to and follow it, while ignoring the lived experiences, the lived realities of the people involved. Fine, their interpretations may be tainted by bias, but it's not sufficient to ignore it because of that. So I feel some of these popular interpretations flow from this liberalist thinking of peace or of issues in which we just impose interpretations, based on the powers or the power we have or the asymmetric nature of the relationship with the people involved. He who feels it knows it. And that is why I feel, no, we should stop calling this a conflict. Moreover, even if you want to reconcile, the first responsibility of the state is to do what? Guarantee security of the people and ensure restraint on the part of the aggressor. That it is even after you've done that you can begin to say, okay, let us, talk of reconciliation. But there's no conflict here, because what are the issues in dispute here? Who are the parties to be brought to the reconciliation table? So I feel it's a fundamental flaw in our understanding and interpretation when we ignore the lived by any shred of analysis. What I'm doing is using the tactics of terror to to attack you, to oppress you, or to. So that is what we are saying there. If we go by empirical evidences and even the lived experiences of these people, and I think the submission by the traditional ruler, gives what we call an emic perspective in anthropology, that is an insider's perspective based on his lived experience. So my worry now is that we have to avoid this hegemonic interpretation of issues. That is, the moment the popular media or the international organizations call something give a label, we just go to and follow it, while ignoring the lived experiences, the lived realities of the people involved.
Affairs with Edmondo Below is live. In the global village of conflicting ideologies and complexities, understanding systems and schemes through awareness and social reconstruction becomes expedient.
They never told you how you offended them?
I'm not on trial, so I can't go before
Join the radio man, Edmondo Below, on State Affairs for local and international politics, security, extensive economic analysis, interviews, and world power play.
Nigerians must choose the path they want to follow. Follow the same looters and sponsors of violence who control the political structures or encourage the formation of a new leadership team.
Be a global citizen and join the radio revolution on State Affairs. State Affairs with Edmond Obilo. Radio just got deeper.
Join the discuss. Let's hear your voice. 070694 93000 or 070144 75770. All right, let's go. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Hello?
I can hear
I'm
you.
Deborah from Ibadan.
Good.
In a country when the leaders are saying the country is not worth dying for, I don't know what we still expect from that country. Because majority of our political holders, they are not patriotic enough to die for this country called Nigeria. It's only the poor masses that are being oppressed. You can imagine what happened in Plateau with that woman crying, and our president said they should bring those in the hospital to the airport. Is that a president for the country? Where is the sympathy? Where is the body language of the president? And the same thing happened during that of Benue, when they said there was flood, then they cannot pass through. I don't think they always need our resources. They can't die for this country. It's only the citizens. If they can see one person who is ready to die for this country, like Mandela, I'm ready to vote. Like this set of people who said the country is not worth dying for, and the set of people we still need in 2027, 2031, we should forget it. God will heal us.
We should forget it. She has already forgotten 2027. Am I in that mood? Who is in that mood? Who has forgotten 2027 elections? All right. The lines are open. morning. All right, Bosun, let's let that caller go. All right, there's another caller there. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Edmond.
Yes, good
I'm
morning.
Julius. I'm calling from Okola. Now, whenever people want to talk about defending themselves in this country, what they always refer to is calling up thunders and calling up some spirit, conjuring some spirit to fight their enemies. I don't know any country in the world, maybe you know, Mr. Edmond, that they used to use their ancestors to fight wars or fight intruders in 2026. I don't know, maybe you know, maybe you tell us. Then, and in Greek, in the Greek mythology that we hear about Zeus, the Poseidon, the Cupid and all that. What if Greece is fighting now? Do they call on all those people to come and fight wars for them? Or they use their missiles and the way, because you know Iran, so they have their gods before in the past. They used to consult before. And the Americans and the Israelis. No, why are they not using it now? Why do you always rely on thunders and spirits to come and fight our wars? I don't understand. So thank you.
I'm trying to understand. Even in ancient time, warriors went to war. And that was during the times of the gods. Even warriors still went to battle. Kiriji War. And in 2026, we are waiting for the thunders to fight the war. Even the traditional ruler you are looking up to has been kidnapped by the bandit. Where is your God? Even the traditional ruler you are looking up to has been killed by the bandit. Thunder, where are you? Help! The lines are open. Call the radio station 070 694 930 00 070 757 Have you not heard? The traditional ruler has run out of the palace. He has abandoned the shrine. He's running for safety. Good morning.
Good morning, Edmond.
Good morning.
My name is S.J. Olasupo. Until we can put food on the table of all Nigerians before we can see the end of all the You get me right? Without that, we should open the border. Remember this man, 1985, where they took over the government? The import is telling me to all the citizens in cheapest price in order to make me come down. So where is that time government to go? God bless you. Bye.
I didn't understand a word in that call because the line was poor. Let's try the next one. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Bilo.
Good morning.
Well done work. I've been enjoying all your analysis around you. And how I wish the whole nation and the people of nowadays can turn to this and know what has been happening to our country, Nigeria, if they can learn, and if there can be a rescheduled and a reprogrammed of our nation, Nigeria. My name is Peter. As long as our youth are not close to their radio, they are not close to the information, they are not close to the past history of their country, Nigeria might remain as it is till kingdom come. You say your vote, what do you expect? You said what the government that we bargain for is what they're enjoying. That's the truth. And again, regards to the gods are still there. They can still fight. But you can hypocritize Christianity, you can hypocritize Muslim, Islamic, but the gods cannot be hypocriticized. And as long as the gods cannot be hypocriticized, If you do things in the wrong way, they will not answer you. But if our leaders, our kings, the people that has the power in their custodia, if they can be very sincere, if they can be very direct, the God will see answer, and things will see answer. All these bastards that are killing our citizens anyhow, if God could stand, if they can be sincere with God, who are they? They can be flushed out within minutes. But the question is, the custodian of our local gods are God. Are they sincere? Are they ready? Are they not being compromised? Are they not part of the problem? Look at all our kings dining and whining round about the world, round about with the evil government of the nations. How would the gods answer them? But if they can be sincere, if they can be dedicated, if they can be focused, even with their God, definitely the God will stand and will fight for us. It is quite unfortunate that even in Yoruba land, our kings are being killed by rats. I mean, like rats and so on. They are not around. They are not around.
Thank you. Thank you. Who is looking up to the gods? Where were the gods when Africans were enslaved and taken into slavery? Where were the gods when the whites ransacked the Benin Kingdom and sent Oba Ovuramen into exile? Oba, for that matter. Hey, let's leave the gods alone, please. Please. Let's leave the gods alone. Where were the gods when the children of the land have ransacked the wealth of the land? Let me tell you something. The banditry you see today is not a Fulani problem. I can see some argument on the north-south dichotomy. The northerners want to destroy themselves. That's their problem. See, Dele Faro to me makes an argument about hegemonic tendencies. Whatever befalls a nation is the totality of the character of those people. That teacher that takes a child to a fraudulent exam center, she comes home and complains about bad government and then prays to the gods of hosts to help her. She lied. God will not help her. What we sow, we will reap. Leave the gods out of it. The sins we have committed against this land, we will all pay for it. The only savior is if we change our ways. Righteousness exalts a nation. When criminals are in leadership, the output will be criminality. Bandits will be everywhere. And they can't stop it. When you bring a bad cook to the kitchen, don't expect a sweet food. It will not be delicious. That means you are dreaming. When you call on the gods to save you, when your actions have brought calamity, the gods will not exist. What you give, you get. To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Force equals KE, where K is elastic constant, E is extension. It is Hooke's law. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. It's a rule. Blessed are the peacemakers. If you don't make peace, you will get war. If you are a civil servant and you are stealing from the coffers, you will get it in return. If you are a journalist and you are part of it, you will pay for it. Oh nation, reflect on yourselves. Before you point the next finger, point at yourself and redeem yourself. After you have redeemed yourself, the light will begin to shine from you. The next man redeems himself. She redeems herself. Redeem yourself, O nation. The Igbo is angry. The Fulani complains that the Yoruba dominate. The Ijaw shouts in rivers. Yet they are guilty of the actions they accuse others of. He that comes to equity must come with clean hands. A people deserve the government they get. Enjoy your government. I wish you well. The lines are open. 070-144 757 70 and 070-694 930 00.
Hello, Edmond.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me once again. I'm quite agreeing with what you're saying. My point is, I keep saying there's no the masses can prevent itself.
The line is not clear. No. Line is not clear. Okay, we'll take this last call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Edmond. Well done for the good job you're doing for Nigeria. Hello, sir.
I'm listening.
Okay. We have always said, defend yourself, defend yourself. To me, the greatest problem we have in this country is the Nigerian military. They cannot protect the citizens, and they cannot allow them to protect themselves. You don't protect yourself with empty hand. Even if you have a den gun, the military will come and retrieve it. And when the marauders, the terrorists come, they won't come. Even when you mobilize to defend yourself, they will come there and become an obstacle to that defense. So Nigeria is in a very precarious situation that nobody knows what to do. Talking of
all right, it's okay at that point. It's okay at that point.
That one cannot work.
All right, thank you. The next program is Ijoba Ibile. Abiodun Adewale is back. He is back to give you the grassroots stories. He is back to explain. Abiodun Adewale is back. Ijoba Ibile is back. It is Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station. I am Edmondo Bilo. Thank you for being there. Be good. Be good. Thank you.